Hey guys, so it's been a while since I read you guys a poem of mine out of this little book. And before I read you guys today's poem, I just wanted to tell you, for those of you who may have watched my last video, I did mention doing a poetry performance of 5 different poems of mine, all of which are in this book, by the way. So while most of them are relatively new and you guys haven't heard them yet, you will eventually, and I will tell you which poems are from that performance. So one of the poems that I've read before, I believe in my ASMR love poetry video, was a poem that I read for that performance. That one was called Kevlar Heart, and I think this is the second one chronologically that was read for that performance. This one was written about winter of earlier this year, so like around January, February-ish, and I am going to read you guys the poem and then talk a little bit about it, because there's some like interesting research behind this. But the poem is called Forever Cologne. Alright. I am not normally drawn to scents, but I was drawn to him. Like pheromones are a brand of magic I ignore until I encounter his, and then suddenly this magic is all I can think about. Like he is secretly burying his mark in my lungs. Like for a few moments he is literally the air that I breathe. Chin-shouldered, I soak you up, leaning casually as if I am not so much a part of your universe that I've completely left my own. Hugs where I am your sponge. My heart has read too many romance novels, and I am writing your name between the lines, crossing the I's and dotting the T's as I go. They say the sense of smell is most closely linked to memory, and if that's true, I think I must be remembering my dreams. Fantasies played out only on the backs of my eyelids. I wonder if my body knows that they aren't real, that your breath will never mix with mine, that your scent will never seep into my sheets as it does my soul. So yeah, that was kind of sad considering the, I guess, punny title. It actually took quite a while to come up with a proper title for this poem because it's not, I guess, the way that I usually write things. I usually write, and those of you who have, watch videos where I read other love poems of mine can sort of get this sense where I mostly talk about how my mind works and how my heart works, whereas this is very biological in nature. It's very different. It's something that isn't experienced that often, which is part of why I, as far as I know right now, have only one poem about it, unless there's like a missing poem somewhere. But yeah, this poem plays off of the idea of pheromones and a very base biological attraction, which isn't very often experienced. It's a very rare thing, and there are a lot of different theories behind it, behind the idea of pheromones and how they function, at least in humans. Of course, there are a lot more concrete studies done on animals, and how pheromone functions for them. They, especially, the sex pheromones tend to be more along the lines of when the female is, ready to make babies, she releases all her pheromones so that the guys know, and that happens in humans too, but the way this works is a little bit different. There is a theory out there which has not been proven, it's still just a theory, scientific theory, that pheromones are used to attract specific types of mates, not just any mate. So, some sort of see it as a sort of soulmatey type thing. Some people think there's a biological basis to it, like, the person who you are, chemically attracted to would be a person with who you would have very biologically fit kids, whether that's because of, and here I don't know that much about the science behind this, but maybe, you have different antibodies, so the kid would be really, like, have a really good immune system, or, like, your mitochondria and stuff like that, or the genetics work out. It's a little bit fishy, and again, it's still just a theory, but a lot of people take from this what they will, and there have been a few studies, nothing extremely conclusive, but one study showed that they had a bunch of women smell the sweat of a bunch of men and rank them on attractiveness. And if a woman and a man were related, she was more likely to rank his scent as far less attractive than the other women would, and also as far less attractive than she would rank the other men. So there's some idea of, like, that someone who you're related to, the scent is not as attractive to you. And as someone who has a brother who plays a lot of sports and will, stink up the car with his soccer sweat, I can relate to that. I don't know if any of you have experienced this when a family member, comes back from the gym or does something athletic and is kind of really sweaty and stinky and really gross, versus, maybe someone who you're dating, seeing in the same situation, it's kind of attractive, like, oh hey, he just came back from the gym, or whatever thing it is that you guys like. I don't know. But the idea here is that this is one of many, presumably many, measures in place to prevent something like incest from happening. There have also been a couple of studies, which I haven't looked into as much, but studies on sexuality and how pheromones are perceived as different based on sexuality, and so there is a theory that this is part of, how the basis for sexuality, I guess, comes up, is that, someone who is homosexual will be attracted to the pheromones of the same sex, and thus, homosexuality versus heterosexuality, or in the case of a more fluid, like bisexuality, it'll be both. But, the idea that there is a biological basis behind this is at least partly rooted in the pheromones, which is something that I read recently that I find very interesting. So, that is what I have about this poem. I think I mentioned in a previous video that I am likely going to be focusing on individual poems, or one or two poems at a time. In this case, I couldn't really find another poem that I had written that I felt went with this poem, so I kind of opted for a more read the poem, talk about it a little bit. There are a couple other cases where I might have a couple poems that go together that I can read together to sort of give you an idea of, I guess, what happened in some cases. This poem is interesting because it was the first experience of this sort of biological attraction. And it was a case where I knew that, like, the attraction was purely biological because I knew that things would not work out with this person. Like, no matter how much I would want them to, it just would not work out personality-wise or on any other sort of level. So it was very disappointing, I guess, because, you know, this is something I'd studied and never really experienced, and finally I experienced it, and there's nothing I can really do about it. But not all hope is lost, because you can experience this for more than one person over the course of a lifetime, which I guess sort of detracts from the whole soulmate idea and sort of leans towards the genetically fit idea. But since this poem was written, I have experienced this again, so that is, I mean, I guess not all hope is lost, you know, and there are some people who may go without ever experiencing this. I talked to some members of my family about this idea, and granted, my family, you know, Indian arranged marriages, of course, never experienced this. Also, scientists, so they not only had never experienced this, but couldn't quite understand the whole, I guess, scent leading you to, like, a genetic match, which is why this is still kind of being studied a lot, because a lot of scientists still don't understand how exactly it works. Like the idea where, you know, releasing pheromones during certain parts of a hormonal cycle, or there are similar pheromones that are released to mark territory or something like that, is a little bit more well understood versus the idea of being attracted to a specific person's pheromones is a bit, I guess, less concrete. So it is a pretty controversial theory in the scientific community, but there you go. You guys can decide for yourself what you think about it. Let me know if this is something you've ever experienced, or what you think about this theory, or poem, I guess. And I think that'll be it for today, and I'll see you guys next time.